Welcome to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives, where we connect you on policy and politics with the politicians that implement those. On the phone with me today, I have Andy John Kalkounos. He's been on my program before, and even prior to starting this podcast, we had Andy John on to discuss the pandemic and what it meant for the 4 different restaurants that he runs, specifically in the state of Illinois. So we brought him back again to discuss what's happening in the economy right now and how that is affecting him in his workplace. Andy John is also the township supervisor for Palatine Township. He's already told me that his small business experience has helped him save money for the township folks as well, township taxpayers. So we appreciate all of his efforts in getting involved politically, but we're really interested more than anything today in today's conversation about what is happening in his business model given high gas costs, given employees that are difficult to find and keep, and given supply shortages. We want to check in with Andy John, and so he joins us today on our hotline. Welcome to the program, Andy John. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeannie. What a pleasure to be with you.
So could you give us, our listeners, again, just rattle off the restaurants that you and your family have been operating for decades now? Chicago Prime Italian, I believe is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Chicago Prime Steakhouse, Chicago Prime Italian, 5 O'Clock Steakhouse in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and most recently the Avanti Banquets in Fox River Grove there on Northwest Highway. It all started at the Prime Table in Rolling Meadows. My dad had a couple of partners. My dad was a bartender at the Prime Table and his 2 partners, and he purchased the business from the landlords, and that's where he got his start. I mean, that was his first real successful business. And I was your busboy there, and I'm still your busboy today.
Wow. Yes. So tell us about that. You're a small business owner, and I know when the pandemic kind of hit, boy, things were looking pretty dire there for quite a while. It was, the expenses kept piling up, but the revenue was not coming in at all because of these forced shutdowns and lockdowns. You have since, I think, partially recovered from that, maybe fully recovered from that with the help of the taxpayers and by all rights, everybody got helped out in that situation. Good. We had to keep good businesses in business. But going now, what's it look like for you? Are you finding the ability to hire back staff? Because that was a problem in the pandemic.
Right. So, yes, going back a couple of years, the shutdown was catastrophic for the whole industry, mm-hmm. Hospitality, food and beverage, white tablecloth restaurants. We don't do a lot of carry-out pickup orders, right? Drive-thrus exploded. They did really well. But in the white tablecloth fine dining segment, that's, our ticket prices are $45 to $85 a person. That could be, that doesn't travel as well. People are looking for that experience. They're paying for that, right? So we got through that, and now, thank the Lord, we did get some support from Congress and from the CARES Act that had provisions to support restaurants specifically. And what's going on right now with labor is a real issue. Mm-hmm. We're finding that people have left these difficult jobs, which these are hard. These are tough jobs. These are, people know restaurant people are tough. We're resilient. We're hardworking. We're passionate. And people are looking for the next best thing. So you're seeing people not returning back. And interestingly, in this kind of in a regional market segment kind of overview, what we're experiencing in the Northwest suburban market, right? So everything from Route 53 or 290, as it ends at basically Lake Cook Road and 53, and all the way down to Irving Park mm-hmm. in 53. I call that the Golden Corridor, right? So that region, it has experienced almost artificial increase in revenue, traffic, population. People are fleeing the city of Chicago. This has been happening for about 5 years now, mm-hmm. in a major way. But every year that the crime keeps going up, this continues to push people out. Now, Rosemont and Oak Brook are, if Chicago is red, Rosemont and Oak Brook are yellow, because now there's shootings in both of those malls. And now this region here is the only green zone, if you want to call it red, yellow, green. And so this is a robust enough market as the second largest economy, Schaumburg, in the state in terms of tax revenue generation. The state of Illinois is getting the second largest tax revenue generation from the Schaumburg region. So Chicago, red, Rosemont, yellow, Schaumburg, green. So we're seeing people moving out here, property values increasing. You're seeing a lot of a population push. Young professionals want to come out here, take the train back to the city for work if they have to, but they want to work from home now more than ever. And now we're talking about the Bears coming out into the Arlington Heights area, which, by the way, is Palatine Township. Arlington Park Racetrack will reside. The Bears, if in fact they come, and it looks promising, if they come, will be in Palatine Township, which also gives us an opportunity to serve, a whole different dynamic, from emergency services to the snow events and major, crowd control and so forth. So what you're experiencing in the northwest suburbs is a lot of people that are leaving the state. They're not leaving Palatine, Rolling Meadows, Arlington Heights, Elk Grove, Schaumburg, Itasca, Medina. They're not leaving this area, Inverness, Hoffman Estates. They're not leaving here. This is a good area. This is where people are moving to. So I should be experiencing, from a business perspective, I should be experiencing all the market, the benefits that you would experience in the downtown Chicago market right here in the suburbs, but I'm not. I have inconsistent business still, because people are still working from home, and they're back to work 1 or 2 days a week in the offices. The offices, which we're surrounded by, are relatively still empty. They're coming back, but they're finding resistance. So you'll never see a 5-day work week for most of these offices for years to come. It'll be at the most 4 days, and then you won't see 5 days, which might be good, particularly for our industry.
Yes, there was an article recently, I believe, in one of the Sun Times or Chicago Tribune, I believe, and it essentially did talk about that. There's a number of major corporations, while they do want to have some connectivity of folks, those people will come in to the offices maybe 2 days a week to just collaborate on policy or issues together. But then the rest of the time they're working remote. So everybody is trying to sell off or sublet office space that they have, because it's just unused.
Well, here's one of the other benefits. When people are reunited at the office after 2 years of not being together, Jeannie, when I see you after 2 years of not seeing you, hey, let's grab dinner, let's have a drink, let's get the team together and go out. And what do people do? They gather. And where do they go when they gather? At the local watering holes, the fine dining spots, the little bar and restaurants, right? So we're the beneficiaries of those reunions. And so you're seeing corporate groups during the week come through. And then as the economy has inflation and the consumer costs have gone up, you're starting to see Friday, Saturday, Sundays. So our weekdays are corporate, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's all corporate. They fly in on Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, they do business. Thursday, they fly back. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday is usually you, me, our families, mom and pops go out, date night, dinner, family night, right? So you're starting to see a little bit of a fall off on the Friday, Saturdays. So it's an interesting kind of trade-off where you're seeing a little bit more corporate credit cards swiped during the week. I lost some dates on Fridays and Saturdays because it costs $150 to pump fuel now in your truck.
That's unreal.
If you got an SUV, people are really worried about the cost of goods. And so we're experiencing some interesting things.
Okay, so let's talk about the inputs in your business. You're in the food service industry. You know, and so your inputs, I mean, everybody knows they go to the grocery store themselves. They know how much more things cost. And it's not like your costs are stabilized at all. They're going up as well. It's not like your wholesale cost for the beef you buy, the chicken. I imagine you've seen similar price increases. How are you dealing with that? Is there a break point where you cannot actually push it onto the consumer because they just won't show up? What are you having to do?
So what we're doing is, first, we're not, in terms of staffing first, we're taking less we're taking less groups because we can't handle. I don't have 18 servers like I once did. I have 8, 7. And so I can't take groups of 65 and 85 like I once did. I'm taking groups of 15 and 20, but one every 2 hours, right? That's the most. And then, so from a staffing perspective, we are taking less so that we can do a good job with what we've got. And so we want to make sure that when there's a dip, we're still able to feed the people that are on staff, that they don't walk out with $30 and say it wasn't worth the gas to drive to work today. So we got to worry about making sure staff's taken care of first. And then the house, when we're buying, what we're doing is there's only so much we can charge for the steaks, the proteins, and so forth. And so what you do is you do what you can with those. And my philosophy has been, give them less, charge them less. So we give them as much as we can, like we used to have a 12-ounce filet. Now it's an 8-ounce filet. And so instead of, people don't want a 12-ounce. They don't want to spend that kind of money. It's going to cost you $60 now to do a 12-ounce filet. Hey, listen, I still want to go out. I still want to get that experience. I don't need to spend $100 a person just because the market's out of control. Give me an 8-ounce filet. I might have a 12-ounce bone-in filet, like a 16-ounce bone-in filet, but I have those cryovac sealed. I have them ready to go. They're fresh. But I only go through so many of those a night. So I give them a little bit less of an ounce cut, charge them less. Okay, that's a $35, $40 steak, whatever the number is, right?
Right.
And so they still go out and have that experience. And then you hope that when you make it up on the sides and the dessert, and maybe they have a martini, and you make a little bit more margin on some of the cocktails and desserts, but it's tight no matter what you do.
Sure.
But the real engine is the staff. If the staff's taken care of and you have that continuity, you continue to build those relationships with the clients that come through corporate during the week, and then families and dates on the weekends. And then people come back to visit their friends. Hey, how was the kids' baseball game? Hey, what happened with the wedding? When you guys went out of town, how was the wedding? So we want to know that story. We're a part of the community.
That's terrific. So you also run a banquet facility, and I think this is kind of interesting. How's the wedding bookings going, though? There was so much that was delayed or from the COVID time. I imagine that hopefully bookings are up.
Yeah. Bookings are exploding.
Oh,
so once
good.
again, we've had 2 years of stacking, what we call stacking in our market. And so 2 years of everyone having to push their wedding, delay. I got to push it again. So now, this year, all the weekends are booked because the people that were bumped from 2020 planned for 21 and bumped it to 22. And the same thing happened in 21. So you couldn't gather in large groups, particularly in Illinois. Right. A lot of them escaped to Indiana and Wisconsin because those markets were open. The Grand Geneva, the Abbey, some of those other sort of micro markets have hospitality, food, beverage, or they could do the rehearsal dinners and make it a weekend destination type thing.
Yes.
So what we're experiencing at the Avanti Banquets in Fox River Grove is a boom. And so we have weddings booked out through this year into next year.
Wow.
Basically we only have, I think 3 or 4 dates left for this year. And now you're starting to see Monday, you're starting to see events happening on off days, and we're obviously discounting them, but you're starting to see Thursday, you're starting to see people get their weddings in much more. They're doing it outside. We have a huge tent out there. They're doing the ceremony right there. They're making it much more cost efficient. And so we're adapting to that. It's great for us because the banquet business, we're planning. It's easier to plan. We know It's 200 people. We know it's 400 people. We staff, we prep, we order, we plan ahead. And the benefit is I can, have staff from both of our Chicago Prime locations in Schaumburg go to the Avanti to support when we have additional staff available to support them. So it's kind of a nice situation at the moment. So we have some real compression going on. And speaking of that, people are leaving Chicago, Rosemont, and when into these suburbs, they're bleeding into those secondary and tertiary markets like Fox River Grove, Elgin. You're starting to see that activity out there.
Well, and it's just absolutely beautiful along the river there, the Fox River. So you can see
gorgeous.
why. I mean, if you Rosemont compared to even Elgin's got beautiful parts. South Elgin, absolutely gorgeous. The whole Fox River Valley is absolutely gorgeous. St. Charles, Geneva. Yes, there's definitely a flight out of places of eastern Cook County and certainly southern Cook County into other parts.
You're seeing people discover the suburbs that we have. People live, work, and play here. And it's beautiful and it's safe, and neighbors care about each other, and people smile and wave. And it really is that lifestyle out here, and that's attractive, especially when you come from an environment that and provide that type of support. This is a great place to live, work, live, play, and so we welcome everyone. It's a great place to grow up and live and work. And I got to tell you, the suburbs have it all. And pretty soon, as you see, they're opening up. I think I don't know that the decision is made, but Rockford Airport is going to be expanded to handle more of the cargo from Ohio. And so you've got
I think that most people don't even realize that there is a Rockford Airport and that it handles a ton of cargo right now. I mean, it is.
Right.
And so that'll relieve some pressure off of O'Hare for passenger travels. And but yeah, we're very blessed in that way. I mean, we think we only have two major airports. We actually have Rockford as well, and we have a lot of other sort of regional airports that provide services. So I mean, the funny thing about Illinois is that it is a very attractive place if you want to do business, if you care about being in an environment where you can get great health care, or if you want to be, if you're attracted by higher education that is second to none in, for example, Northwestern University, University of Chicago, University of Illinois, you can put them in that category. So, I mean, we've got everything that's going, that we should be a thriving state. Andy John, that's not the case. That's not the case.
Sad.
It's not the case. I mean, you talk about the wealth and the richness of the suburbs and how easy it is to live here, and it is. It's quite easy to live here. My kids have been given so many opportunities by living where we live in Wheaton that I think that they just couldn't even get in many other places. But that said, Illinois is not on the right track, and people know that Illinois is not on the right track. So on the horizon, looking out 5 years. What do you see? What do you predict? What's your prediction?
Well, I'm so hyper focused on the region that it scares me to look at the state.
Good point.
When I look statewide, go ahead.
No, that's a good point. That's a really good point. We are going to have people. We are going to continue to have thriving regional areas where the housing prices are going to be sustained, where you are going to be able to still get a decent education. Well, I don't know about that so much. Honestly, public schools are failing everywhere you go. Everywhere there's wokeness, everywhere they're failing our students. So I think that we do need to work on that. But there's other parts that there's a lot of businesses doing incredible things that have a worldwide reach, which is why Illinois will continue to survive, and in some cases it will thrive, but it's at what cost? At what cost to the taxpayers? I think that's the question.
Nobody knows this better than you, and so I think you understand the macroeconomics of the statewide political schema than anyone. I see a little bit more regional. So my world, when I see the chessboard, I see, Lori Lightfoot got the casino deal that wanted on the river. Now politically and financially, because finance is, in Godfather, you remember the famous, finance is the gun, politics is knowing when to pull the trigger, right? So, but the financial logic, she can now release the bears, right? She can get the bears financially. It makes sense because she's got the casino, which is the golden goose. Politically now, it might be a big black eye for her to release the Bears to Arlington Heights or not fight as hard or let that go away. Not that she wants it, of course she wants to lose it, but you're seeing that fragmentation away from the city of Chicago. And you're seeing a big flight for quality. And people with a little bit of means can afford to come out to the suburbs a little bit. There's great affordability and there's great reception to people in the suburbs. And so if the Bears come out here, if the regional airport in Rockford continues to expand for more passenger convenient travel out of O'Hare and Midway, and you're starting to see a northern Illinois regional kind of bloom. And it's all beneficial to us because it also helps with traffic. It helps with the air and lungs can be absorbed in this robust market, which is the market, the Golden Corridor, from 53 in Lake Cook to 53 in Irving Park. Those markets, Arlington Heights, Palatine, all those markets, Schaumburg, Hubbard States, Elk Grove, these markets are robust enough, primarily Schaumburg, to ingest the oxygen from all of this business that comes into this region when the Bears Stadium, 800,000 people come this direction. If that happens, and it looks good, if that happens, that just really kind of puts a highlight on suburbs across the country. So I think Illinois, I think the Northwest suburban market that we're in right now might be able to lead the nation on how to do things the right way if managed carefully, if coordinated correctly.
Okay. Well, you make a good point, and I love your optimism. I don't disagree that we are going to have hubs or particular regions in the state that will continue to do well. However, the state's financial condition will be a drag on everything that is actually possible. And so I caution people. I caution people that, and I have said this before, I think it's still true, that until we get our power structure correct and until actually suburban voters wake up and understand who they're voting for, which are pure Marxists down in Springfield, and you're represented by quite a few people that are I mean, they might as well be a Chicago Democrat, yet they represent the thriving suburbs of Chicago. But they might as well be an inner city Democrat because they vote the same way. They voted for the crazy crime bill, for example. They voted for Illinois' version of the Green New Deal, which is going to result this year, according to Amron's own headlines, rolling blackouts and higher prices. So, I mean, so who you elect to the state level is going to impact you regionally, even as regionally you are going to do better than average in the rest of the state.
That's well stated.
I think is something to be very cognizant of. Anyway, well, I'm thrilled. I'll be seeing you next week at an event that you're hosting for a friend of mine up there. And to listeners, shout out to Chicago Prime Italian, Chicago Prime Steakhouse. Just fantastic food there, great atmosphere, wonderful staff. And Andy John Kalkounos, thank you so much for joining me on The Real Story with Jeannie Ives.
Thank you for what you're doing. You're amazing, and I'm grateful to be with you today.
Thank you. Welcome back to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. And in this segment, we're going to be discussing election integrity. It's a theme that we have revisited quite a few times. And why are we doing it this time? Well, because the DuPage County Clerk has recently sent out these very expensive postcards to households. All registered voters have received this one. And this postcard is essentially asking you to sign up for permanent vote by mail. It says your permanent vote by mail application is enclosed. Apply, or you can apply online. So you open up this postcard, and I haven't opened mine yet, but here you go. You can open it up. It's a trifold, pretty expensive, gives you all sorts of information. And on the postcard, you'll notice where you can check the vote that you wish to have vote by mail in all subsequent elections and wish to receive the party ballot indicated below in all elections that require a party designation. So what happened? What happened here? Well, the Democrats passed legislation, and of course, Governor Pritzker signed it, that said you can now be put on a permanent vote by mail list. So that means that without having to verify that you still live there, without verifying that you're still alive, simply because your name is on the voter list and you decide to sign up to permanently get a vote by mail ballot, then you'll always, in perpetuity, get a vote by mail ballot. Gee, I wonder if anything could go wrong with this. Well, we know that plenty can go wrong with this. And actually, we also know that already there are a number of these postcards that have already been sent to people who no longer live at the home that they used to reside in. So on the phone with me right now is a gentleman who received one of these. His name is Paul. And so Paul contacted me because I asked people on Facebook, I said, hey, if you get one of these and it's for somebody who previously lived in the home and no longer lives there, please let me know. Well, Paul reached out on Facebook and said, yep, we got one of these. We got it for my son. He hasn't been in the house for a couple years now. So Paul, is that the story? Is that what happened?
It is. And first of all, I wanted to plug you a little bit. I wanted to let you know we're big fans of yours in Downers Grove.
Okay, wonderful.
And in the time that you and I spoke online, I have heard from a couple of other residents in Downers Grove that have received this mailing, and those folks don't live at those addresses or have moved out of state, like you mentioned.
Well, it's really concerning because when we started to do our election integrity project last summer, based off of the 2020 information, we found voters who were dead that actually were actually showed on the voter registration information that they actually did vote in 2020. We know that voters who actually moved also voted in 2020, which is wrong. And yet now we're setting up a system here with permanent vote by mail where this is going to happen as much as possible. I mean, it's going to become even worse. It's not going to be more secure elections. It's going to be less secure elections.
Absolutely. I mean, our son hasn't lived in Downers Grove since 2017, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I don't
so
know
it's
why
been
he's
5
getting
years.
mail to our house.
5 years, and
yes.
he's still and he's not voted in 5 years either.
Not in Illinois.
Not in Illinois, at least. Okay. Well, listen, that's. I'll tell you another thing that happened here. So in the process of doing our voter integrity program last year, we found that well over 30,000 voters hadn't voted in 10 years, and yet they voted again in 2020. Now, we've been in a process of trying to check some of those voters out, but how likely is it that you didn't vote for any of the last 10 very controversial elections, by the way, including Donald Trump in 2016, Barack Obama? It was a controversial election. Maybe you were really for him or maybe you were really opposed to him, but he was a controversial figure when it came to elections, and you just decide not to vote. But you show up in 2020 after 10 years of not voting in any election, municipal, primary, general election, and you finally vote in 2020. It just seems very odd to me that happened. So we don't know what's happened with that. Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to be disastrous. I'm for voting in person. I know that there are going to be situations where that's not going to be possible. But on top of that, I'd like to see showing your ID, because I don't know, if we don't have voter integrity, what do we have? I'm just very, very dismayed by what I received in the mail.
So, were you surprised? Is this the first you'd heard of permanent vote by mail, or were you waiting for this?
It's first I've heard of it making it or giving you the option to make it permanent. Mm-hmm. But no, I try to be fairly politically aware. I was aware of it from a national standpoint and how it affected the 2020 election and skewed the numbers there. I guess this is a Democratic playbook. Why not? Why not in DuPage County?
Yes, well, the clerk is a Democrat. She won election 4 years ago. She's up for election this year. She's had a number of missteps, including in the 2020 election, not being able to account for every single ballot that was cast and being actually 1,600 names short. And still there's no explanation from her or her office about that. The latest malfeasance on Jean Kazmarik's part is the fact that she failed to file tax paperwork with the Illinois Department of Revenue, and therefore the county has missed out on over $4 million estimated in marijuana sales tax revenue. So, and it also, let's be clear here, in 2020, she exceeded the requirements of that the state legislature had put in place for COVID voting, in that she sent a vote by mail application to everybody who was on the voter registration rolls, when the legislation only required you to send it to the voters who had voted in the last 3 previous elections. So she exceeded that. And in doing so, we know for a fact that at a minimum, 20,000 ballot applications were returned to her office as undeliverable. We FOIA'd that information. She failed to give it to us, saying that they don't have it. So they're just throwing out really good data that if these voters had undeliverable mail and it came back to her, what does that tell you about the voter? Hey, they're probably not there. Your U.S. Postal Service couldn't deliver it. That tells you something about that voter. Maybe an investigation should be done. Maybe you should release that information to nonpartisan entities or to political parties so that they can do the work as a committeeman would do in their own precinct if they knew that they had, if they were doing their work, they'd actually already know whether or not there's bad voters that are still on that list, and there are plenty of bad voters on the list. So, I mean, when you've talked with other neighbors about this and they received this postcard, what was their reaction?
Well, they were shocked, but in the state that we live in, the physical state,
yes,
not surprised.
Yes.
It's quote unquote Chicago politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it certainly is. And, in 1982, during that governor's race that was very contentious, it ended up that Big Jim Thompson won that race. But it was one of the largest election fraud cases in the history of the U.S. Department of Justice. And they found out that over 100,000 fraudulent votes had been cast in the city of Chicago alone, accounting for about 10% of all the votes cast in that 1982 election. And what it ended up being is that 65 people were indicted for violating federal election law, and actually 63 of them were convicted of federal election crimes. 2 of the people, one could not stand for election because he was impaired, and the other one could not stand for election for prosecution because he was dead. So 65 out of 65 people indicted in that. And actually, it's one of the largest election fraud cases in the history of the United States, and that happened in Chicago. So the Democrats have refined their playbook, in my opinion, quite frankly, and they know how to actually get ballots out of people that may not be qualified to vote. That's just the case. And by the way, it doesn't even have to be overt like it was in the 1982 election, which obviously there was an overt decision by the Democrat Party to cheat. That happened overtly. It can also just be this way where people don't even understand their residency anymore. Hey, I got an application in the mail. It was forwarded to me. Somebody gave it to me. Sure, it looks good to me. I might as well vote for my old house as a vote for my new house. What's wrong with that? I'm only voting once. Well, there's a lot wrong with it. You have a 30-day residency requirement. Anyway, I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, you're very knowledgeable, and I really appreciate you taking up the topic. This is super important, and it needs to stay in the forefront. This has to be fixed.
It absolutely has to be fixed. And I'm telling you right now, and I thank you for being my sounding board here to see if you think this works. But truthfully, the voter rolls should be public and published. And that way, neighbors can check on neighbors. And I think it's terrific. Well, actually, you know what? That house, they sold that house 3 years ago. None of those people should be on the voter rolls. None of them live there. I live on the street. Those people don't live there anymore. They should be taken off the voter rolls. How hard is that? And then, the voter rolls, if you're in the party, if you're an elected official, I'm a elected precinct committeeman. I have access to the voter rolls. It's pretty, you can see everybody's voting record right there, who voted, who didn't. It's kind of, if we had a public face of this, if people could actually check the roll themselves, I think that a lot of this might go away if people were start to report on problems with the voter rolls. And I don't think that you need any sort of these highfalutin computers analysis done. I think I think that analysis is important in that it can detect it, but how do you get rid of it? Well, every single vote has to be accounted for by an actual real voter who physically resides in the place that they're voting from. And if those don't match up, that's where working locally, we can ferret out any illegal votes. I don't know, just an idea. Does that sound too simple?
No. I think voter integrity is going to be a super hot issue this fall. It is already. I know there's an awful lot of hot buttons out there right now between the borders and now abortion and such, but I don't know how any of that can be more important than voter integrity. Voter integrity will take care of everything else.
I agree with you. I think the a part of the Democrats' playbook is also to say that people like me who are invested in investigating what happened in the 2020 election still from a standpoint that there's a lot of anomalies that don't make sense. I'm going to give you one of them. And we have a voter report from December of 2020, so just after the election. And we then pulled another, we also have the voter report from November of 2020. And when you look at those reports, we also have a report from June of 2021. And when you look at those reports, there were over 7,000 voters who actually voted in the November election and are show up on the December vote report as having voted. But then by June, 6 months later, they no longer show up on the voter registration database. So the clerk was, for whatever reason, deleted over 7,000 voters from the voter database who actually voted 6 months earlier. And yet she can't clean up voters who are dead or who moved away 5 years ago. This is a problem. Why did she delete over 7,000 voters who just voted 6 months ago? I want to know. Have not gotten answers. So there's a number of these anomalies. We went through them in previous podcasts with our listening audience. I'm going to get my notes together again and go through those as well. But again, I really thank you, Paul, for coming on this program and alerting me to your in particular your son's case. 5 years gone, still got a permanent vote by mail application by the DuPage County Clerk. We're FOIAing her, just to let you know. We first want to know how much this very, very expensive hard cardstock mailer took, perforated and everything. It's colorized as well. We want to know how much this costs taxpayers to produce and to mail. And we want to know how many of them are returned to her as no longer deliverable. That might be a start.
That would depend on how the postage was purchased, would it not? The type of permit that they have on there, as to whether or not it's on a one-way trip to that household or if it's going to return?
Well, it does say return service requested on the postmark. And it says, mark return to sender if this voter no longer resides at this address. So if you do receive one of these, I encourage people, in fact, could you do a test for me, Paul? If you still have your son's postcard, mark on there, return to sender, okay? Put it in the mailbox, have it sent back, and then we're going to pull a voter list and see if his name appears on the next voter list in a few months. And we'll see if they actually
I'll do
do
it
clean
tonight.
up their voter list or not. And I'm going to encourage everybody to do that. And when you do that, I want you to email me at info@breakthrough-ideas.com. That's info@breakthrough-ideas.com. Let me know that you've put return to sender because the voters no longer live there, and we're going to check and see if she cleans up the voter rolls. A couple examples here before we get off the phone. A very good friend of mine received 5 permanent vote by mail applications at his house for a family who moved away 4 years ago. Another woman I was on the phone with, she has information that a voter who had moved from that address 25 years ago is still registered at the old address. Another friend, both daughters moved away well over a year ago. They're still on the voter roll list as well. They received postcards. So as we accumulate this, I want everybody who's listening to this podcast to, again, email me the information and then take the postcard that is no longer valid for that address, put on it, just like it says on the very front of it, it says, mark return to sender if this voter no longer resides at this address. Mark it, put it back in the mailbox, and let's see if she cleans up the voter rolls. We're going to check. That's all we can do until we vote in new people, and then we can strengthen our election integrity laws here in the state. All right, Paul, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Gene. I really appreciate it. Keep up the great work. We love you.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.